We're good? Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Elaine Gargiulo. I'm the Director of Military and Veteran Services here at NJCU. And I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Michael Hurley, who is a former World Trade Center Fire Director and Adjunct Professor at NJCU. I would like to read a little bit about him, and then I will introduce him without further ado. Professor Hurley is retired from the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey with 34 years of experience. A majority of his career was spent at the World Trade Center, where he was the World Trade Center Fire Director, responsible for fire and emergency management activities. Professor Hurley holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Fire Science and a Master's degree in Public Administration. He regularly instructs classes and lectures on fire and emergency management related topics to a variety of private organizations, government agencies, and military units. He also serves with the United States Air Force Chief of Staff Civic Leadership Team. During his career, Professor Hurley has been formally commended on various occasions. Most notably, he has been awarded medals for valor and heroism in his actions during the 1993 terrorist bombing of the World Trade Center and the attacks of September 11, 2001. He's also the recipient of the NJCU Distinguished Alumni Award and a member of the FDNY Honorary Fire Officers Association. With that, I would like to introduce Michael Hurley, our alumni of NJCU.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. What I thought I'd do is kind of just tell you what my experiences were from September 11th, and then if you have questions or comments or anything like that afterwards, I'd be happy to answer them. As you just heard, I was employed by the Port Authority. Most of my career was at the World Trade Center. I had varying jobs there. I didn't start in the position that I ended with, but along the way, I kind of found my interest in the fire world, and that's led me to where I ultimately became the fire safety director at the World Trade Center. But on the morning of September 11th, I was I had come in, always got there really early. I didn't like to get stuck in traffic, so I would get there pretty early, usually around 6:30. And you know, we'd kind of see the night shift that was there, some of the guys from the operational units and stuff, and we'd always gab and chit-chat and joke with each other. We had worked together for many years, so we all knew each other really well. And you know, it was just a routine day, routine morning, and I actually went down to our command center, which we had built in the basement, more closer to Tower 2. And we had built that new command center after the 1993 attack. During that attack, it was destroyed, so we built a new one. It was very reinforced, real thick walls, a big thick door like a bank vault, very, very secure place. So I was in a meeting, and this fellow, we were talking, and all of a sudden, the lights flickered. We heard a little bit of a noise, not much, a little rumble. Everything sort of shook. But nothing really out of the ordinary. Now we're, you know, in the basement level, and you remember the towers were 110 stories tall, so it's a big, wide, open amount of space, you know, to transfer that energy. So a lot of it didn't make it down to the basement. In other words, we didn't hear a lot. We both looked at each other, and we kept talking. The lights came right back on, but within seconds, the radio frequencies all started to you know, just light up with everybody yelling and carrying on about an explosion, a fire, debris, all kinds of stuff that made no sense. You know, it just didn't make any sense. And we had a big wall of CCTV cameras. And I walked over and looked at it, and I just saw paper kind of fluttering down. If you've been to a ticker tape parade or you've seen one on TV, you know what I mean, right? Just paper falling from the sky. And that's exactly what it reminded me of. And again, didn't make any sense. And I said to this fellow, I'm going to run upstairs and see what happened. I went up to Tower 2 in the lobby and on Liberty Street, which is the southernmost part of the World Trade Center. I could see debris out in the street. I could see pieces of people. It didn't make any sense. Engine company number 10, which was right across the street from us, they came over, and they didn't know what happened either. They just responded on their own. They yell, "Hey, Mike, what do we got?" And I said, "I don't know." You know, we're all standing there, so I'm outside now, and I turn and look north, but the size of Tower 2 is so vast that I can't really see past it at all. I'm basically looking at the building. So I can't even see Tower 1, but I see a lot of people running and chaos and screaming, and again, doesn't make a lot of sense. So anyway, a couple of us run down Liberty Street, and we get to West Street, and I look north, and I'm sure you've seen the photos, Tower 1 with the upper floors, flames coming out the windows. My first thought was somebody brought a bomb into the building. Somebody brought, or maybe multiple people brought bombs, and they all detonated them at the same time, or something like that. We had no natural gas. We had nothing in the building that could do that, you know. So we started to run north along West Street to get to Tower 1. And another kind of confusing thing happened. As we're running, we come across people lying in the street. And I think there were 3. And at first, I honestly didn't know they were people. They were so severely burnt that we stopped and we looked, and it looked like pieces of wood, like you know, from a campfire, like charred wood. And they were all deceased, and we stopped and we looked to make sure if there was anything we could do. And again, it made no sense. How did these people get to this condition from a fire, you know, many stories above, 100 or whatever stories above us? And I remember actually looking around to see if there was a car. I just assumed it was some sort of car accident or something that caused them to be, you know, so injured. It wasn't. It kind of, we had put that aside. We kept running. I could feel things hitting me. We felt, you know, little pieces of glass and whatever it was, you know, little pieces of debris hitting us. Run into Tower 1, into the lobby. And the first person I run into was the chief of the 1st Battalion, who was a friend of mine. We had worked together for a lot of years. And I'm glad it was him, because the old saying about you don't want to meet somebody for the first time at the scene of an emergency really, you know, played into that day. You don't want to, you know, be with another person from another agency that you've never met before. So we were glad. I think he was glad to see me, and I was certainly glad to see him. And he said to me, "Everyone goes." That was his first words to me. And I remember I looked at my deputy fire safety director, and he already had begun that. "Everyone goes" meant everyone is evacuated. It's not a partial evacuation. We're not going to try to stage this. It's just get everybody out as quickly as possible. And that actually became a little bit of not an issue, but a lot of people wanted to know, how did I know what he meant? And you know, I had to tell people many times over, it's because that's what we do. We train, we drill, we work with each other every day. And so when he says things like that, or I say something that we know, right, all the little lingo, we know what we're talking about. We know what we mean. So people were being evacuated out of Tower 1. You know, you may see the movies or videos and things on TV, and it looks like complete chaos, and it was very organized. I mean, people were coming down. It may not look like that, but people were being evacuated down and out, down and out. As people were coming out the bottom, there was a point in time when people began to jump from the buildings, and so we could not allow people to exit onto the street. We put them through the shopping mall, if you were ever there. You remember those big shopping mall, and out various other exits so that they were not near the area on West Street. That became a very crucial moment when people began to jump from the building. It was at that point that everybody realized exactly how serious this was. I to this day don't like to think about the choice that those people had to make to stand in a window, and you've probably seen pictures on TV, or you know, some of the things that they play now around the anniversary, where people are actually looking out or hanging out of a window, and their choice is to say, "Let me end this quickly," and just jump. It really affected a lot of people to watch that. and I don't mean to be graphic or anything, but there were points in time when I had to leave the building, and I would have to stand there and watch and wait until some of the people stopped jumping so that I could run out and do what I had to do or speak to whoever I had to speak to, and then do the opposite coming back. Stand there and just almost time it, you know. It sounds crazy, right? But that's what you had to do. The first firefighter to die that day died because someone landed on him. So for a person jumping from that height, if they land on you, it's fatal. We're doing our thing, and people are being evacuated, and it's going as we would plan, right? We drill for this, we train for fires and emergencies. People are coming in, they're being staged, units are being sent up, reports are coming back down to the command center, exactly what we would want. All of a sudden, Tower 2 gets struck. And we could feel Tower 1 shaking, and no one knew what that was either. We look out the window and we see debris falling, and now we're getting reports about that. You know, Tower 2 got struck. Now, this is 20 years ago when we didn't really have the cell phone technology and things like we have right now. And I always tell people, you probably knew more at home watching TV than I knew standing in the lobby of the building. It sounds a little crazy to say that, but that's just the way the conditions were. We didn't have a TV in the lobby at the command post. I'm sure most command posts do now, but the video feeds from CNN and whatever news networks might have picked up on it right away were probably giving people more information than we had there. So we did. We knew it was a plane. We knew there was a second plane. As firefighters are coming in from other parts of the city, the Brooklyn, Bronx, Staten Island, et cetera, that don't normally respond to Lower Manhattan, I guess during their trip there, they're picking up bits and pieces of information, and they're saying, we heard, I remember they said they got Disney World. They got the Mall of America, the Pentagon, the Capitol, the White House. Now, a lot of this was not true, but this is just what people were hearing. A lot of rumors are spreading. And, I remember like the whole country is under attack. This is some organized attack throughout the entire nation, So we don't know what to think at this point. And but we keep doing our job, right? We're getting people down and out and down, and that's all we want to do is get them out and away from the buildings. And people are running, and this is what's happening, and it's working. And that continued until at one point, Chief Pfeiffer, who from the 1st Battalion, he says to me, Mike, we got to move the command post outside because we have a report that there's a third plane headed to New York. I said, okay. And, but I said, wait, I had been outside, and I don't know that he had at that point. And I said, before we move outside, I want to show you something. And we walked over by the window, and I pointed out all the remains of those who had jumped in the street. And I said, if we go out there, it's going to be very dangerous. We need to have something over our heads. He said, good point. He said, why don't we move everything over to the World Financial Center? Okay, so I grabbed one of my guys. All my deputies were standing there. And as I ran by, I said, come with me. And this one particular guy said, who, me? I said, yeah, come with me. I wanted to leave him over there. And we ran across. There was a big pedestrian walkway bridge over West Street. We ran over that bridge into the Winter Garden area of the World Financial Center. And some of their security staff were standing there, and I told them who we were. I said, we're going to move our command post over here. I said, go get anything that we might be able to use. If you have radios, phones, whatever you might have, bring it here. They said, okay. We're coming back over the bridge, and the first tower collapses. So as we're just about into the Trade Center, all of a sudden, in my mind, I said, oh, great, now we're having an earthquake. It just, everything shook, and I didn't know what it was. Never did I think that the towers were collapsing. So as the debris is falling, it's coming now through the roof of this bridge. So we can't continue in. We turn around and we run back. We run through the Winter Garden, out the other side of the World Financial Center to the water. And as I look back, all I see is that big cloud of dust. I'm sure you've seen the videos and photos. I get to the water with this other fellow, and we run out of land. And when I tell people this from other parts of the country, they forget that, or they don't know that Manhattan is an island. So we ran out of land. You know, we got to the edge, and I look back and I just see that big cloud of dust. And I don't know what happened. I don't know what's in it. And I know I don't want to be caught in that, whatever it is. So I climbed up on the seawall, and I said to him, "Come on, we'll take our chances in the river." And his eyes got real big, and he said no. And I don't blame him. I wasn't really too anxious to do that, but I thought it was a pretty good choice at the time. And he said, no, I kind of, come on. You know, this is seconds. I'm telling you that it took a lot longer to tell you that than it happened. But, you know, I wasn't going to leave him. So I climbed back down, and we just huddled together, and the debris came over us. Didn't know what that was, you know. And in my mind, I'm thinking maybe the antenna or something fell off the roof. You know, some part of something fell, obviously, but, you know, I didn't think it was to the extent that it was. We got up, and we kind of made our way back to West Street, and you couldn't really see much. It was pretty much like a snowstorm, just a lot of dust in the air. We tried a couple of phones along the way, pay phones and things didn't work, and we were making our way back towards where the World Trade Center was, and the second tower collapsed. So now, again, we almost had a repeat of that whole thing, and we don't know what's going on. And as the dust is kind of settling, there's not many people left. You know, those that were just kind of walking north to get out of Lower Manhattan. And I didn't know what happened. I couldn't find anybody. This other fellow I was with, he took off. And so anyway, I said, well, I guess, you know, I was wearing a suit, and I said, I got to go home and at least get some better gear on. So I made my way through the Holland Tunnel, which was closed, of course. Everything was closed, all the transportation. Got home, got changed, and a buddy of mine worked in my unit. He lived in my town at the time. He was off that day, and he picked me up, and we went back. Our big thing was to try and find people from our unit, you know, our guys that we worked with. And it just wasn't to be. We went to Liberty State Park that night because we had seen a bunch of ambulances going there. And we figured, well, maybe they brought the injured to that point, and they would have information. And we went down there, and I've never seen so many ambulances. And they were all just idle, just standing there. All the medics were kind of hanging around. And I said, where did you take all the injured people? And this one fellow says, there were none. And I said, what do you mean there were none? There had to be. And he said, I mean, we treated a few people for things, but pretty much you either walked away or you didn't. You didn't make it. And it was really at that point that it hit me that, you know, this is probably not going to be, you know, this is not good. The next morning, we continued the search, and, you know, we were working now with FDNY and trying to help them and pinpoint things. We went back into the building underneath with FDNY and FEMA. We never did find anybody, but the folks from my unit were gone. And when I mean gone, many have not been recovered or identified to this day. There's still, I don't remember all the numbers since retirement, but somewhere in the neighborhood of about, I believe, 1,000 people are still not identified, roughly. So there's, you know, 1,000 families that don't have that closure that they need. Remember I told you about the group of deputies that were standing there, and I said, come with me, and the one fellow said, who, me? And he's the only one who lived. All those other guys did not make it. It was very, I don't even know what the word could be. It was just random luck, I guess. If you ran out of the building or you were in a certain way, you might have ran out and went to the right. You were okay. If you ran, the guy behind you might have went to the left and was killed. It really just made no sense how people survived and how others who were, you know, shoulder to shoulder with you, when you turned back, they were gone and they've never been found. And that always amazed me that, you know, where are they, you know? I can tell you that working there afterwards, you know, some of the floors, when you would see the compression. And the best way I tried to describe it to somebody was, if you've gone to the Grand Canyon or you've seen pictures, you see that kind of striated rock and different colors and things. That's what it was like. You'd see something and then another color, and it was the layers of floor and steel and floor and steel and floor and steel. And that's how tightly compacted it was. Just, you couldn't believe that, this room was a foot high. And then there would be a layer of steel, and then the next, layer. And once that started, that collapse, it just continued on, and all that weight, one on top of the other. There was no way to stop that, so of course it just kept compressing deeper and deeper and deeper. In the time afterwards, there was a lot of, before the reconstruction started, it was cleaned up, and all done the following May. The site was actually cleaned, if you want to say. Everything was removed, and it sat there while decisions were made, and people decided what to do, what to build. If you recall, there was a contest, and they had all the different ideas and buildings, and what should we put back. And finally, when all that was done, the reconstruction started, and it was kind of a long process because so many things had to happen in a very specific time frame, in a very specific way. Lower Manhattan is very, very tight, not a lot of room. I mean, a construction site of that project would usually have a lot of area to bring equipment and material, and then slowly build something. But that's not the case in Lower Manhattan. So everything had to be timed just right. How much we're going to dig and steel, and it was just amazing. To be part of that. The first thing that had to be done was the bathtub wall. You may have heard that term. The bathtub wall had to be reconstructed in areas because the bathtub surrounded the World Trade Center site to keep water out. It's like the opposite of a bathtub, actually. Keeps the river water from coming back into the lower areas. So part of that was destroyed, and part of that had to be replaced. And that was an ordeal in itself. And then everything else, slowly became, or slowly came after that. So it was quite an operation. And slowly but surely things got built. They started to come up out of the ground, and then we kind of saw some progress. And it was always it's a negative place to be, knowing what happened there. But at last, finally, as the years went on, we saw some positive light. Some growth, some new things happening there, and it was kind of, it made you feel better. We're part of now rebuilding what was taken away from us. And it continued on and on and on, and then until when I retired. And there's still things going on there. The Greek church, if you've been over there, the Greek church that was newly constructed is, I think, I haven't been over there in a while, but I think that's almost done. I think they wanted to have it done this year. I don't know if they'll make that, but I think that was one of the last projects that was left to be done. I'm not really sure. Since I retired, I haven't kept up on all the happenings over there. But that is, it was nice to see, nice to be part of the rebuilding and the regrowth of Lower Manhattan after such a devastating event. That is really it in a nutshell as far as the day. People ask me sometimes, was I injured? Yes, I injured my knee that day. I still have issues with that. I had some respiratory issues, which I have taken care of. I see a doctor on a regular basis for that. And I also, kind of an unusual thing, I had some surgery for skin cancer, which it's kind of an unusual thing, but it's part of one of the medical conditions that seem to surface from people who work down there. So I had that taken care of, and I see somebody on a regular basis for that. So I kind of have my schedule of doctors that I go to, keep things in line. Other than that, I was, you can choose to go to NYU or other places. They have annual screenings, and you basically spend the day at the hospital, and they do all sorts of tests and everything. And it was very, It's very nice that they offered that. And I did that for a while, but it just became, it's a lot of work to go to the city once you're not there. You know, once I'm not working there, it was kind of just easier to go to my own doctors and have the same things done, you know, here in New Jersey. But they do offer that for people who were affected, first responders and so on. So that was a nice program, and that's still ongoing. Well, I know I kind of went through that really quick. I wanted to just give you a brief overview of what it was like there that day. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any. You know, if there's any questions or comments, or I know we're getting, you know, Saturday's the 20th anniversary. People have asked me, you know, what do I think about that? I mean, 20 years, I can't believe it's 20, but every year is the same to me, you know. It's a day, it's just kind of a solemn day. I don't like to do a whole lot. I just kind of, you know, be by myself almost and just, you know, take it easy. When I worked in New York, obviously, the ceremony in Lower Manhattan, we would be part of that, and all the setup and all the security and all the sort of things that go along with that. But now I just kind of, there's some memorials and things I go to. I actually, for the last few years, have gone to Dover Air Force Base. They have a very nice ceremony there, and they asked me to speak there a couple of years ago during their ceremony, and ever since then I've been going back. It's a very nicely done ceremony. I just found it to be very comfortable, so that's where I'll be Saturday. Yes?
How did you get through the Holland Tunnel?
How did I get through the Holland Tunnel? That's a good question. When I got to the tunnel, it was closed. And even though that's a Port Authority facility, we don't all know each other because Port Authority is a lot of different facilities, aviation and tunnels, bridges and things. So I kind of ran in there and identified myself, and once they sort of realized, okay, he's, you know, one of our employees, I just waited there, and a maintenance vehicle happened to be going through the tunnel, and I jumped in that and went through. They were kind of ferrying injured and some other people through, and the tunnel was closed to traffic, and I remember this guy driving, I don't know how fast he was going, but he was, you know, racing through the tunnel, and we couldn't get out of there fast enough. I had this thing about, you know, I thought the tunnel was going to collapse. And that kind of stuck with me for a while. You know, I couldn't be in a really tight place for a long time. I still can't, honestly. But I never had any kind of claustrophobic, you know, issues or anything like that. But ever since then, I find that I don't like to be in a really confined, tight space. I'm okay with it now, like a tunnel or, you know, things like that. But, you know, I remember my son when he was young, he crawled through there was some sort of a touch tunnel thing at some thing we went to, and he crawled through, and, you know, it's pretty small, and he didn't want to go, and I said, I'll go with you, and he crawled in a few feet, and I'm behind him, and all of a sudden, it kind of, I did not want to be in there. And he said, I don't think I want to do this. And I said, okay. We sort of backed out. I was sort of happy he didn't want to do that. But to this day, that's one of the things that kind of bothers me.
What do you feel are like some lessons learned? Like when I think of what that day, you know, I was here and I remember, and it feels like yesterday, you know, like I still won't go over to the World Trade Center site because I still feel like it's too soon. But what do you think are some lessons that are learned? And do you think like the younger generation understands it as much as what we've experienced?
Well, lessons learned from that day, I think, you know, there's varying, you know, from levels of security and things like that. But just in general, I've always told people that, you know, the events that happened to those of us who experienced them are very different than to people who did not. So I've tried to explain this to some younger people. You know, Pearl Harbor, I mean, I like history, and I've been there, and it's very moving to me to go to Pearl Harbor. But I don't have the same, it doesn't impact me like it would somebody who was there on that particular day, right? So it's similar with 9/11. A lot of young people are they like to read about it or hear about it, but they just don't have that, you know, and it's just human nature. There's nothing negative about that. It's just the way we are. So I don't know if that, but lessons learned, I think it's important that this sort of thing be brought, you know, annually to people's attention. I don't know now, but I know before I retired, there were many schools that did not teach anything about 9/11. I hope that's changed. But I know that there were, I heard many times, you know, school systems that didn't talk about it. They wouldn't have a moment of silence on 9/11. They just kind of let it go. And like I said, you know, younger people that were not born, say, that day, they don't have, but I think it deserves more than just nothing. You know, we have to talk about it. We have to keep it fresh in people's minds. You know, what happened that day will or could happen again. And so if we just forget about it and push it off to the side, then it probably will. Yes, sir.
Did the Port Authority change how they respond to events like this since 9/11? Procedures and stuff?
The Port Authority, I mean, lessons were learned all around. The Port Authority did much different, there's a lot of different tactics and things that were, that came about after 9/11. Different units were formed, different parts of, you know, the operations and facilities and things like that were changed. So they definitely did change their way of response, as did, you know, the city and the state and federal government. Many people did. You know, a lot of lessons were learned that day. And it's one of the things, you know, after an event like that, if you have to, right? Whether it's a small fire or a large scale incident, you kind of critique it, you go over things, and then you say, what can we do better next time? How can we make this better? You've heard of, you know, all these things at on the federal level that push down to the state level. There's regional, you know, units that will respond to things. That if there's a big fire in South Jersey, there's assets that can be taken from the northern part of the state and brought down, or, you know, different parts of the country, like in the wildfires out west right now. There's different places throughout the federal government that they have supplies. They get shipped out, or wherever the fire happens to be, Alaska, California, western states, Florida, Texas. You know, they can move around the country. It's not easy, but it's something that can be done. So there's sort of regional things on the federal level as well.
Are there any questions from the general audience? Any other questions? Well, thank you very
Okay.
much.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you for attending, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I tell you, to me, it's still like it's yesterday, like when I hear, it's just, you're right, it's a different experience, you know, that the younger generation experiences than we do, you know.
Right.
I was here, you know, we were both here.